The Solana network runs on a proof-of-stake mechanism, which is different from the proof-of-work mechanism that our early blockchains ran on. The whole concept of the blockchain, especially this word block here, it has to do with the fact that we are running that decentralized ledger, meaning we have thousands of devices that are part of the same network communicating with one another to maintain this ledger in such a way that no one has the centralized authority for deciding what actually happens. But the ledger still has to decide what did actually happen. And the way that works is one of these devices will produce that block. And so a block is our source of truth that tells us what exactly happened since the last block was created, which funds were sent from which wallet to which other wallet, and in more modern blockchains, managing all of the decisions that were made around decentralized applications. But there's an interesting component to creating a block. The reality is that we want to incentivize people to participate in this network. And one of those incentives comes in the form of a block reward, which typically delivers some amount of coins or tokens back to the device that created the block. And because there are rewards for this, everybody wants to be the one to produce that block. So, which one of these devices gets to produce that block? We need a mechanism for deciding who gets to do that, and that leads us to, first of all, talking about proof of work, which was developed for Bitcoin, as it was the first blockchain, and Bitcoin used the concept of proof of work to solve many of the problems that were preventing this type of blockchain architecture from being created originally. So proof of work essentially boils down to a contest of sorts among all of the different devices. We are going to perform a race to get an answer to a very difficult mathematical problem. This race to find the answer is going to be based on the idea that I'm essentially just going to perform a guess, try it out, see if it's the solution to the mathematical problem, and if it is the answer, then I create the block. If not, I continue guessing. Well, because this is a race, we can imagine that the more guesses I can make per second, the more likely I am to be the one to be chosen to create the block. And therefore, our reward is tied to the amount of hardware that is in our miner. And yes, in a proof-of-work network, we refer to our devices as miners, which is why we talk about Bitcoin miners, but we don't talk about Solana miners, and we'll get to that here in a moment. So the downside to proof of work is because it's such a race, it becomes sort of this arms race as well. From an arms perspective, in this case, we're talking about hardware. We want to make sure that we have the most hardware available because that's going to return the most rewards to us. This means that this is going to continue to cost a lot of money. Hardware is going to go obsolete. I'm going to have to replace that. And because our concern is primarily with hardware, the more hardware we have, the more power we're going to consume, which just adds to additional costs. And for that matter, sometimes data centers just don't want Bitcoin miners to be operating because of these massive power costs that result. This leads us to a better mechanism that Solana has adopted from the start, which is proof of stake. And interestingly, Ethereum, which started with a proof of work mechanism, has since migrated over to proof of stake as well. Rather than being a contest, proof of stake revolves around the idea that we are simply going to be taking turns. Except this isn't just a very fair, hey, everybody gets a turn every now and then. This is going to be weighted. And it's weighted on the concept of stake. When we're looking at Solana coin holders, people who have SOL in a wallet, they are going to be able to stake their coins on these devices, which are now known as validators rather than miners. Validators which acquire stake are going to be able to produce blocks, and the more stake a validator collects, the more blocks are going to be created by that validator. So this first validator with just a little bit of stake will create a block every now and again. The next validator will create a couple of blocks here and there. And then this last validator will get the most turns to create blocks. Staking is a way for Solana coin holders to put their trust in a particular validator, or otherwise reward the validator for being a good citizen and participating well in the Solana network. Proof of stake solves many of the problems that proof of work created. For example, this is no longer an arms race. Adding new hardware to a validator in no way helps it to produce blocks, because blocks are based on stake. Furthermore, my hardware is far less likely to go obsolete, which is ultimately going to lower the cost of operating a validator. As long as a validator is powerful enough to properly participate in the network, it can continue to hum along without needing significant hardware upgrades. And all of this is going to lead to much reduced cost of operations, both from a hardware perspective, but also from a power perspective, making it far more efficient for helping a network of devices try to decide which one gets to produce that block and collect those rewards. Thanks for watching, and remember, it's always a great day at the lake.